Our second reading this morning comes from Genesis. We're going to follow, as we did last year, journey through the Old Testament. And what better place to start than with the story of creation? This passage comes from a translation that may not be super familiar to your ear. It's from the Message. A Presbyterian minister went back, and Eugene Peterson is his name, Dr. Eugene Peterson. He went back to the original text, and he wrote, as best he could, a translation of the text into language that is more familiar to our ear. So some of the patterns that happen in it aren't necessarily just to match what someone thought it should be. Some of the patterns in his writings match what the original author was trying to share. You'll notice this, and I hope you celebrate it, because this is truly eye-opening, at least for me, when I hear it and see it. First, this. God created the heavens and earth, all you see and all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, an inky blackness. God's Spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. And God spoke, light. And light appeared, and God saw that the light was good, and separated the light from the dark. And God named the light day, and he named the dark night. And it was evening, and it was morning. That was day one. And God spoke, sky, in the middle of the waters, separate water from water. And God made sky. He separated the water under the sky from the water above the sky. And there it was. He named sky the heavens. It was evening. It was morning. Day two. And again God spoke, separate. Water beneath, heaven, gather in one place. Land, appear. And there it was. And God named the land earth. He named the pooled water ocean. And God saw that it was good. God spoke, earth, green up. Grow all the varieties of seed-bearing plants, every sort of fruit-bearing tree. And there it was. Earth produced green seed-bearing plants, all varieties, and fruit-bearing trees of all sorts, and God saw that it was good. And it was evening, and it was morning. Day three. God spoke, lights, come out, shine in the heaven sky, separate day from night, mark seasons and days and years, lights in heaven's sky to give light to the earth. And there it was. And God made two big lights, the larger to take charge of the day, the smaller to take charge of the night, and he made the stars. And God placed them in the heaven sky to light up the earth and to oversee day and night, to separate light and dark. And God saw that it was good. It was evening, it was morning. Day four. And God spoke, swarm, ocean with fish and all sea life. Birds fly through the sky over the earth. God created the huge whales and all the swarm of life in the waters and every kind of species of flying birds. God saw that it was good. God blessed them. Prosper, reproduce, fill the ocean, birds reproduce on earth. It was evening. It was morning. Day 5. And God spoke, earth, generate life, every sort and kind, cattle and reptiles and wild animals, all kinds. And there it was, wild animals of every kind, cattle of all kinds, every sort of reptile and bug. And God saw that it was good. And God spoke, let us make humans in our own image. Make them reflecting our nature so that they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves on the face of the earth. And God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. God blessed them. Prosper, reproduce, fill the earth, take charge, be responsible for fish in the sea and birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth. And then God said, I've given you every sort of seed-bearing plant on earth and every kind of fruit-bearing tree, given them to you for food. To all animals and birds, everything that moves and breathes, I give whatever grows out of the ground for food. And there it was. And God looked over everything he had made. And it was so good. So very good. And it was evening. It was morning. Day 6. Heaven and earth were finished, down to the last detail. And by the 7th day, God had finished his work, and on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. God blessed the 7th day. He made it a holy day, because on that day, he rested from his work, all the creating God had done. And this is the story of how it all started, of heaven and earth, when they were created. My friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It was, and it still is good. You know, there was a day that when I would get out that picture of a platypus, that everyone, whether it be a child or an adult, would just look at it and go, But I think it's because of technology. I really do. And I think it's because our teachers do such a good job that people have seen it. And they see it and they're not as surprised. And that's okay. What about when we just walk through a park and we see something different and it surprises us? Something alive, or that was alive, and it's new to us and we learn about it. And we remind ourselves, it is good. You see, in this world, especially with the news we hear on TV all the time, we hear about things, and there's so much, well, that's bad. Or that shouldn't be that way. Or that shouldn't, we hear over and over, whether it's world news, whether it's national news, whether it's local news, whether it's whatever. And so much, I think we need to hear sometimes that it's good. That there's life. That there's hope. That there's promise. There's a story about a rabbi and a professor who taught philosophy and ethics. Now, have you ever met a professor that teaches philosophy and ethics? They can be a real pain in the you-know-what. True? Because they know it all, and they'll tell you so. So the rabbi, who supposedly knew it all because of being a rabbi, and the professor were having a conversation, and they were having this conversation from morning until evening, and they admired the sun coming up, and they admired the sun going down. And the two of them together were still sharing their time, and the rabbi said, "Aren't you glad that God gave us such a beautiful day, and that God created this for us to enjoy?" At which time the professor said, everything today was going so well until right then. Do you really believe, Rabbi, do you truly believe in your heart, in your mind, that God created all this? This is all an accident. The science proves it. There was an explosion. There were things that happened. Things evolved. They responded so that they can live here. So things can live here and not other places because they've adapted. Don't you know, Rabbi? This is it's beyond us, yes, but it's an accident. And the rabbi, well saddened by that, said, "Okay, my friend." And they concluded their discussions. And they both went to bed at the retreat they were at. The next day, the professor awoke, and pushed under his door was the most beautiful parchment. You know how some paper is just beautiful? And this parchment, it wasn't just paper. It was that kind of stuff that when you pick it up, you don't even really want to move it much because it might break or you might fold it. And on it was elegant writing, elegant penmanship. And the professor sat down and he read it. And it was a poem of great beauty and insight. And he knew where this had to have come from. So he asked his friend at breakfast, he said, "Rabbi, did you give me that poem?" He said, I provided you that. He said, "It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Where did it come from?" He said, Oh, I'm sorry. That paper, that's just what I found next to my trash can. It was what was left over from everything else that day. Really from that week, it had been a busy week. The professor said, No, that's not true. He said, "Well, it kind of is, because then the paper I had put up on a table, and I put my inkwell up on it, and I was going to write later, but that cat, do any of you have cats? If you put something up, what do? They knock it over. That cat knocked over the ink onto that paper that, well, it was nice, but then it had been ruined, and here it is. And so ink went everywhere. I wiped it off best I could, but there it is. And then when I looked it down, it kind of looks like something. And it kind of looked like words. And so I thought maybe you would enjoy seeing that." And the professor said, "Rabbi, no. There's no accidents. There's no..." And the rabbi said, "Oh, but you told me. You told me that God doesn't create, that there's not something given. You told me that it's all created by accident. I simply shared with you a piece of my pretty trash." Professor said, "No, you didn't. But I'll think on this. You may have changed me." What happens in our lives when those kind of things happen? What happens in our lives when the duck-billed platypus comes across our way? What happens when, if you're raising animals, my house, always animals, right? I had a Pomeranian who got cancer. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Not only got cancer, got lung cancer. So when he got lung cancer, and they finally figured out what was going on, it had affected one of his legs, and so they removed his leg, front leg. He could still get around. He could do okay. Do you know how little boy dogs go to the bathroom? They hike one of their back legs. Do you know the problem with this story? I now have a dog missing one front leg that still likes to hike on the tree. Where's God in all of this? Where's the good? The good is when you laugh the first time, but then you find out that maybe with your dog, with your friend, with your companion, you actually have to hold up so that it can do its thing and be comfortable. It's interesting how God works. It's interesting how God gives us children. God gives us children, and everyone says they're perfect, right? They're perfect at birth. Kinsey, did you have 3 perfect ones? She's nodding her head. I'm glad they're not here. But they're different. They're not what you expected. They don't behave the way you expected. They probably don't behave the way you taught them. True? Everyone else? Martha's kids are perfect. Yeah, we have that. Mitch sits back there, he's just laughing. He goes, "Yeah, I got those 3 perfect ones, don't worry. No problems here." But all that God created was good. And when we hear the passage, it was very good. What do? How do we make sense of this? Is it just between the rabbi and the professor? I think not. Robert Millikan shared this. When I view the universe, it's a microcosm and a macrocosm. Its incredible order, and ponder its vast unknown and unknowable. I join the psalmist of old and say, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Dr. Robert Millikan shared that. Someone who had studied, someone who knew. So there is that hope. And it's not just us. It's not just us enjoying a backyard or a park with a caterpillar with our children. It can be us enjoying even watching the world go by and the world treating itself the way the world treats itself. How do you make sense of that? How do you find good in everything? I was involved in helping out with a family yesterday, sharing in a funeral from Amos, a family who lost a loved one far too young to an act of violence. What do you do? Do you just cry? It makes sense to do that. What do? Do you scream and yell about justice? It makes sense to do that too. But it also makes total sense to remind ourselves that God loves us and that God created and all is good. And that day, in some way beyond us, is okay. How do you do that? How do you walk with each other? My friends, we just do. Our children seem to know how to do this better than we do sometimes. As they take each other's hand, even when the worst thing has happened, whatever that may be, and they walk on. But that grasped hand seems to change things. It was, and it still is, good. Hear this poem by Annie Dillard. The creation is not a mere study, a roughed-in sketch. It is supremely, meticulously created abundantly, extravagantly. Look, in short, at practically anything. The coot's foot, the mantis face, a banana, the human ear, and see not only the Creator created everything, but he's apt to create anything, and he'll stop at nothing. Think for just a moment on this. If God created everything and everything is good, and we see that in the trees and the caterpillars and our children, I want you to imagine what you saw this morning when you looked in the mirror. Were you happy with what you saw? I don't really care if you were or not. I'm just asking. Did you recognize yourself as a creation of God and that you're good? Think about that. You are seen by God as not only a child to be loved, not only as one to be encouraged, but as good, as creation, by the divine, by the Holy One. My friends, that's how our scripture starts. Can you imagine where we go from there? May we always journey together and trust this God. Trust the one who sees us through.